Okay, so if you've ever worked with SQL, you know that a lot of your job entails doing data validation, and you'll probably use functions known as IsNumeric and IsDate to validate. But the problem is that those functions don't always return the correct results, because you might think it's validating correctly, but it's actually not. So you might be missing out on some important data. In this video, we're going to be looking at a better way of doing data validation. Cool, so the first thing I'm going to be doing is creating a table, and this particular table is going to store stock information, so I'm calling it DBO stock. That's easy enough. Run my insert script, which looks like that, and I'm just super pedantic, so I'm going to move this back. It doesn't have to be lined up, but I mean, it just looks better. So I'm going to run that there, insert the data, and everything seems to be happening quite easily, and there are no errors. Everything's easy breezy. Cool, so now that I've inserted my data, I now want to select. So I'm going to select everything from dbo.stock. That's not stock, that's stock. And we run that, and we can see it's returning 6 rows, and everything seems fine. Okay, so you can see we have Sony TV, we have DualSense controller, there's a price over there, and there's game controller's price of $400. There's an immediate difference you can see over here with that over there, and you probably see one somewhere else as well. If you don't, then just wait till we go further on. So everything seems fine, so I want to validate that everything in this column is actually a numeric. Okay, so we can see we have the 6 rows over there, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I'm going to modify this query. I'm not going to say that. I'm going to write item and price. So just so you can see. Oh, that's not how you do that. And there we go. Okay, so it's doing the same thing. And I just want to copy that and paste that there. And under price, I actually want to cast that as an integer. So let's see if I can actually cast all of those as integer. And so I'm going to run that, and we can see there's a failure, and it says conversion failed when converting the varchar value of 1200 to data type int. So why is that failing? So if you look at this, you can see that's actually not zeros, those are O's, as in LMNOP. Okay, so if you look very closely here, you can see that it looks different to the zeros that we have there. Okay, obviously O's are not zeros, and so it fails when it tries to do the cast, which is what's happening over here. So how would we identify the records that can cast correctly? Well, we use something that's called an IsNumeric. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to see what can actually cast to a numeric data type. Okay, so let's say where IsNumeric price equals 1. So whenever you use the IsNumeric, it's going to pass in a value. It's going to say if the value is numeric, it's going to say 1, and if it's not numeric, it's going to return a 0. Okay, so let's run that, and you can see if we got the result, it actually did return some results. New DualSense is there, PS5, Xbox, LG TV. So it skipped Sony TV because rightfully so, that is not a numeric value. But it failed on Game Chair. So why did it fail on Game Chair? Because it can't convert that $ into an integer. Why is it failing then? Because numeric isn't specifically for an integer data type. Numeric can be different types of numeric types. Remember, SQL Server has integers, it has big ints. It also has money. Okay, so let's just remember that over there. So it's going to check if it can fit into the money data type as well. So let's see if I was to say change that into money. Let's see if this works. And cool, we can see it actually correctly casted that $400 into the money type. Okay, so we can really see that we have a bit of a gap here. So we are trying to convert to a specific type, but this is validating on numerics, but we might want to put it into a integer column, and so now it fails because of the fact that there's a $. How are you actually going to get around this? So you can't just keep this as is, because what you can see now, it's always going to fail. So like that, you can see it's always going to fail if you try it like this. Okay, right? So what you actually want to do is find a way to specifically cast it to integer so that you can only get the valid integer types, right? So I mean, this is really up to you to decide if this is going to be a major issue. If you do specifically in this instance need to cast it to an integer, then the IsNumeric data type is actually not going to work for you, because you can see it's validating money as a valid data type. But if your target type is integer, that's not going to work for you, right? So you need to find a different way. Okay, so let's actually look at a different way to validate this specifically to the integer data type. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to a try cast. I'm going to put in try cast, and I'm going to put in price as int. Instead of doing just cast like it does over there, it's going to do a try, which basically means it won't fail if it can't cast it, right? And so it's going to try to do the cast, and if it can cast, it's going to return a value, and if it can't cast it, it's going to return a null. Okay, so I'm going to say where that try cast is not null. So if it says is not null, that means it did cast it correctly, which means that this cast over there should also work. So if I run that, we can now see that it didn't actually fail. It took out of the 1200 and it took out the $400 over there as well. And we can see that now we have correct values being cast into our integer data type. So this is fine. And the same thing is if we wanted to cast this into money, for example, we know that that would work. And so what we will say is, let's say our target has been changed to money, and we've noticed that if you change it to a money data type, we actually can get some more accurate values coming to our system. So I've changed it to money, I've changed that to money, and you can see when I run this now, we get game chair as well, which is the $400 that's being cast correctly to a money data type. So you can really see that try cast is a lot better than IsNumeric, because you can cast specifically to the data type that you're actually using in your target system, as opposed to just using any type of numeric. Now, the same thing can be said about IsDate. What you may not know, in SQL Server, there are two datetime formats in SQL Server. There's datetime and there's datetime2. So let's look at the difference between those two. So I've got two dates here. I've got 1753-0101 and 1752-0101. So let's just run that first one and see if that is in fact a valid date. And you can see it is in fact a correct date. So now I'm going to include that there, and let's see if this works. And if I run that, you can see IsDate is returning a 0 for 1752. Now, for those of you that are actually wondering, 1753 is when we switch over to the Gregorian calendar, and that's to take care of things like leap years and leap days and leap seconds and all those type of things that's happening in between. Before that, we had the lost years, or lost days as they call it, where the things just weren't lining up correctly. So SQL Server has adopted 1753 as a start time for the date time data type. But what if you are getting historic data? What if you're getting records from 1600s, for example, and you want to store it in SQL Server? You won't be able to do that because you can't go past 1753. So what we can do is we can use the datetime2 data type, which is what was introduced into SQL Server in a previous version. And datetime2 goes all the way back to 00000. Okay, so there's no limit on how far back you can go. But the problem is IsDate was never updated to cater for datetime2, so it still goes back to 1753. So how would we check that that is in fact a valid date for our datetime2? Well, we'd use our trycast again. Okay, so how would I use trycast in this scenario? Very easy. I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to say select trycast 1752 as datetime2, and what I'll do there is I'll run that, and you can see it returns the correct date. So you can see it can actually convert that to a datetime2 data type. If however I was converting to a date time, and I wanted to validate that same date, you would see that it returns a null because it can't fit into a datetime data type. So here you can see it's another example of why using a try cast instead of an IsDate would actually be better, because you can see over here in this example it validated as an incorrect date, and over here we can see it is in fact validating to a correct date. Because I've been working with SQL Server for years and I've been using IsDate and IsNumeric incorrectly as well. So if you've been doing it wrong, don't be upset with yourself. It's something that we've all done. But now that you know a better way, I think it's up to you just to go to your code and start implementing different ways of doing validation. Use the try cast. It is a lot better. It's more direct, and when I mean direct, I mean you can specify explicitly validate against this data type, as opposed to just assuming and guessing that IsNumeric and IsDate is in fact returning exactly the results that you wanted to do. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like and subscribe as well. And if you know one person who could find any sort of use in this, and that is pretty much anyone who's using SQL Server, please share this video with them, because they definitely need to find a better way of doing validation. I wish someone had showed me this. I just stumbled across it while doing some nerd work at home. And this will be an easy way for you to help that person to level up their SQL skills. And that's the end of this video. I hope you learned, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.